An entire world is ready
for you to start your career teaching the path to wellness.
Mastering the science of mindfulness.
And the art of coaching.
To help clients achieve mental, emotional, and physical betterment of life.
Through movement,
nutrition,
recovery, and regeneration.
Because impacting one person impacts a family.
Impacting a family impacts a community.
And impacting a community impacts the world.
Become an NASM certified wellness coach.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Mr. Ken Miller. Ken, how are you today?
Awesome, Wendy. How are you?
Oh, just living a dream. No place I'd rather be.
Of course.
Well, today's episode is actually a little bit different. And when I say that, it was one of those things that, you know, I get intrigued and love to look at different things. I love to learn about a lot of different things. And I just a couple of days ago, went to the NASM.org page, our NASM homepage. And I was reading up on some of these blogs that our, you know, fellow colleagues have written. A lot of our advisory board members have written, master trainers. Anyway, a lot of different authors. And there was one that stuck out that I was like, oh my goodness, I never knew that. And I found it absolutely fascinating. And it was really kind of around the topic of science of sleep without it being so far above my head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, now I understand. And there was this quiz that you could take. It's actually a questionnaire, not really a quiz, that you could take to learn more about your own self and when you can perform at your highest level and when you should go to bed and why you're this tired when you do stuff. Because I don't know about you, Ken, personally, back in the day in college, I could stay up all night. I could go out. I could have a good time. I could just take a power nap and then go to work like I slept, 7 to 10 hours. I was productive. I do that now, and I'm a hurting unit for a week.
Mm-hmm. No, times are definitely different. And it's funny you mentioned that because right out of college, 21 years old, I moved to Vegas. And ironically enough, I applied at the local gym, and they didn't hire me, even with my background in exercise science. But what I wound up doing, and to feed into your story, is that I wound up working 5 different jobs when I was out there, which meant I was working AM, I was working PM, I was working early, I was working late. So sleep at 21 was a non-factor. Plus there was social. Right. I was living in Las Vegas, for goodness sake. Right. So
even Arizona State.
And you know what? That is a very, I think that's kind of like right there.
Just saying. I actually went to class though too, and I worked.
And you worked. Yeah. Same here. So sleep, I mean, it was one of those things. I'd go out till 2 a.m, but then I'd have a 5 a.m. Shift at the Nevada test site. Right. So and then I'd go from 5 to 5 p.m. and then I actually taught at the massage school that I attended a 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. class. So here I am. I'm taking little naps here and there, but sleep was like 8 hours. Who's got 8 hours?
Who has that much time? You're going to sleep. I used to say this, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm sleep when I'm dead. And you know what? Yeah. Like, I want to take all of that back because I should have slept more, especially because I had more time then. No, not so much.
Yeah, no. I hear you.
Well, and it brings us to the blog that I was talking about. And it was actually by, the author's name is Dr. Allison Breger. She is a subject matter expert in behavior genetics, sleep, and biological rhythms and research. That's her primary research. And she's passionate about discovering different factors that are going to promote how we sleep and why we sleep like we do and our patterns in different types of environments. And I mean, she's an author and she's actually one of our advisory board members. And so when I was reading it, I learned so much. And she talks about something that are called, what are they called? Chronotypes. And that's actually basically your biological schedule and your clock. And, we're all born with this. And, like babies, they're like clockwork. You get someone on a routine and you take naps at certain times of the day. You go to bed at a certain time of evening. You can guarantee that, at anywhere between 6:37 or 6:40 and 6:55, my kid's like, good morning, mommy. Good morning. And it never fails, never fails. And so, she talks a lot about, a predetermined sleep-wake schedule that's programmed by our genetic blueprint. And so when I was learning more about this molecular clock and how, we all tick at certain speeds, that, our genetic drivers is what's going to dictate how our body responds to the time of day. What is most appropriate for me, Ken, and what time I go to bed might be completely different than you. And that's what I found so fascinating is, not only does she provide, 5 ways to use these types of chronotypes to our advantage of how we can be more productive during the day and when we actually perform at our best, not only with our workouts, but just in life and in meetings and everything, knowing a lot more about yourself. I know when you and I discussed, we're pretty similar. But, again, look at our jobs. We have to be up early and then we have children. So it's kind of like, it totally made sense to me. And I thank her for writing that article. And if you guys have a chance to visit NASM.org and look at our blogs, there's some phenomenal information on there. And those of you guys that are just joining, myself, Wendy Batts, and Ken Miller, we're talking about science of sleep and an article, or actually a blog article that was written by Dr. Allison Brager talking about different sleep patterns. And again, I want you to check it out because we're going to discuss what she talks about. But, I think getting going and taking that questionnaire, it's like something that I just found fascinating.
Well, I can't remember which, because I started going down a rabbit hole. Of course, I took the survey just like you did, and I took it twice because I liked it. When I do surveys and it's kind of talking about you, sometimes I can put myself in a certain frame of mind when I answer questions. So I'll take certain surveys twice and see where, how close I get on both results. And both times I took the test, wound up being pretty close, saying that I was really, my score was 66 on the first, 70 on the second. And what that score is referring to is like where your bias is as far as the type of person you are, which puts me, as you said, Wendy, more of a definite, moderate morning person. Because if I didn't turn on my alarm, as one of the questions would ask is, what time frame would you wake up in the morning? And usually if it's between 5:30 and 8 a.m., that's usually when I'm up rocking and rolling, if it were up to my own devices. But one of the interesting things that I read, kind of clicking through and reading some of the articles, is like when you think about mammals, right? Just as we have our own clocks, our own chronotypes, and when we prefer to wake up and go to bed, animals have the same thing. And one of the things that they showed was, I think they brought up the example of a squirrel. So when they disrupted this, did you read that too? Yeah. The squirrel's sleep, that meant that they were more active at night, which meant they were moving around when all the predators were out. So there is a survival function to it all when you look at the animal kingdom, as far as when is the most optimal time to sleep. Obviously, we're not looking over our shoulders, seeing if something's going to swoop down, pick us up, and take us to their nest to be fed on. But in the animal kingdom, I mean, when you function and when you're active and how you find food and forage for food and take care of your little ones, that's going to be reflective of, okay, when's the most opportune time for me to do all this without getting hunted down myself. So I saw, but when you look, okay, when are you at your best is how I took it. So to where I'm going to get the most done.
And I think, that was one of the key points she was making. I mean, for us, it's not a survival, life or death that, that we need to do. Like you said, the squirrel example. I mean, she actually discussed that in the blog. And, I think basically when you're looking at that, I mean, yes, you've got to think, that's how predators know to wake up and go and hunt for food and do all the stuff that they need to do. And then obviously if you're the one that's being hunted, you need to be smart in when you sleep, where you sleep, and all that stuff. But for us, I mean, I think the key point here is we need to understand some people, as soon as dusk starts to hit, and I am this person, and I can talk to you a little bit about my questionnaire results, but then certain melatonin starts to happen naturally in my body at a certain time of evening. And that's what I found fascinating, because I do notice that it's almost to what kind of this was saying, I start to really get tired. I'm not as productive. So I know that if I have to schedule a very important meeting, or I have a very important call or something along those lines, that time of night is not going to be the most ideal. However, it is saying that, my peak time in the morning, is basically at 8:45 is like when my melatonin onset happens. So 8:45, y'all don't contact me. But then it's also saying that my best bedtime should be around 11 p.m. I try to go to bed between 10:30 and 11 personally. And that, with this information, it helps me, okay, you know what, based on my results and how I'm scoring myself, if I can plan my evening to be done mentally where it's important around 8:45, but make sure I'm in bed by 11, then I should be able to get up in the morning by 5:45 and be ready to go. Unfortunately, I get up a little bit earlier than that. However, if I'm looking at what my questionnaire says, that should be my most ideal time. And so I just, like I said, I know our results were pretty much, the same. And when we're talking about it, there's this questionnaire and it says it takes about 20 minutes. It doesn't, but it's asking all about you. Can you wake up with an alarm? If so, what time is your peak time? I couldn't really honestly answer that, because I wake up with an alarm every single day, or my kid is in my face. So I really don't know what time I would wake up.
You never wake up before your alarm?
No.
I do more
because
often than
schedule my day has to start. I need to be in the car by sometimes 5:30 in the morning. And if I want to actually, get up and shower and look like a girl, I got to get up before then,
Yeah. So you never beat your alarm before it rings? No. Sometimes
but my personal score was a 63. And so this questionnaire was it ranked anywhere between 16 and 86. And so like from 16 to 30, that means you're a definite evening person. Those people that love to stay up late, they're very productive at night. That is not me. And then 31 to 41 is moderate evening. Again, I don't know what they're considering moderate evening, but that apparently was not me. And then there's intermediate, which is 42 to 58, still not me. 59 to 69, moderate morning, that was me. Again, around 8:45 to 9, I'm ready to go. I feel rejuvenated. I feel like I can take on a lot at that time of day. And then I think you said you were definite morning, which was 70 to 86. And so those of you guys that are joining Ken Miller and I today on Random Fit, we're talking about science, or the science of sleep. And we came across a blog that we found fascinating, talking about different chronotypes. And the article was written by Dr. Allison Breger, who is actually one of NASM's advisory board members, as well as, she's got her PhD in psychology, and she studies all of this type of, behavioral genetics and sleep and biological rhythms. And so we were talking about the questionnaire that she highly recommends on this, and we were talking about our scores. And like I said, I love this kind of stuff to learn more about myself, especially when I don't have to pay for it. Well, I like free.
Here's an interesting thing, kind of to tie into a podcast that we recorded before when we talked about intermittent fasting, right? Which wasn't too long ago with registered dietitian Kat Bearfield. And we were talking about the timing of when you stopped eating at night and when you, how many hours in between?
I think you can only eat in 8 hours. So it doesn't matter.
So you have the other 16 hours of not eating, right? So when you stop and then when you start, you have your 16 hours in between, whenever that might be. But, the funny thing is when I started thinking about this, okay, well, if I know that my day of operating optimally for me winds up being earlier in the morning, then I thought, well, if I'm going to adjust myself so I'm going to sleep when my body wants to sleep naturally, then if I'm going to put together a nutrition plan on top of that, I might be going a little bit off tangent here, but now I start to think about, okay, well, if my melatonin starts to kick in at like what you're saying, Wendy, around the 8 o'clock hour, again, cortisol drops, melatonin starts to kick up. That's the signal for the body to start to go night, right? So if I'm going to kind of now look at the other parts of my routine. So there's my eating, there's when I shut down my computer. So when you're talking about, okay, getting ready for bed, one of the things I'm trying to do this year, more than anything else, is trying to just unwind, turn off the computer, get off my phone for both recreation and work, at least 3 hours before bedtime. So if I'm trying to commit to what my chronotype is telling me that I am, so if I'm going to bed by 8 o'clock, so if I'm going to get my good 8-9 hours of sleep, if I'm in bed by 8 o'clock, then that means there's nothing happening after 5 o'clock, right? So there's no work after 5. So as soon as work is done, it's just, whatever's in front of my face, real time with my family. Eating dinner might have to be a little bit earlier, now that I'm looking at the results actually and trying to put it together with my whole lifestyle. Then everything is shifted. Like, it's still daylight when I'm done with dinner, is basically what I'm thinking. So if I'm trying to protect my sleep for what my body wants to do with the sleep schedule, then that's really going to affect when I turn off my computer, my phone, no movies late at night, right? All that blue light, which again, when you read through the blog articles, now you're talking about blue light exposure, now manipulating, whether or not if you need to stay up, how to stay up, or if you need to wake up, how to wake up by manipulating exposure to blue light too. So I think all of that goes into, again, how you're managing protecting your sleep, if you know what your sleep pattern is optimal for you guys.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about, she does talk about the 5 different ways to use your chronotype to your advantage. And you had kind of mentioned all of them together, actually. But, number 1, she said, plan your peak training and your sessions and everything around your chronotype. And so again, if I know that I am most productive and I can perform at my highest level, mid-morning, then that's when I should really sit down and schedule that time. And I know that when I do work out, and if I can actually put that into my schedule without any interruptions or without having to drop it down, I do feel better and I get a better workout. I feel like I recover better, because I'm not a good person to work out before you go to sleep. And so, right. They say that performance is supported by our biology, particularly for rhythms of cortisol and your norepinephrine. So, when you're thinking about that and you're piecing it all together, it actually makes sense. And so, again, I think, going through and looking at some of this stuff, and I know we'll kind of go through all of it at the end, but when you're, think number 1, that's what she says, find out what time is at your peak and then schedule like the things that take the highest performance at that time for better results.
Right. And, what's really funny is that I just had the discussion right before we talked about this as a topic, Wendy. I just had a talk with my daughter because it's 9 o'clock at night and she's still doing her homework. But when she's doing her homework, she just looks like this. Her eyes are open, but her hands are doing a lot of stuff, but there's nothing that's getting put down. And I told her, and just watching her do homework, she's just like me, right? She'll wake up in the morning. She doesn't need the alarm. So she's kind of got my pattern. So I told her, I go, after 7 o'clock, you can't do homework. I'd rather you go to sleep now and then wake up early and then do your homework in the morning, right? She was like, again, like a lot of us, procrastinated, waited till the last minute to get this project done. And she's just trying to do things, but she's just moving things around and not really making it better. So I told her that. And then now that, we're talking about this point of, scheduling your day to do your best work that complements your chronotype. Unknowingly, I was giving her that same advice. You got to work when you're most productive versus trying to get the same amount of work done, but drawing it out over 2 hours. If you can get it done in 15 minutes at a time when you can do it in 15 minutes versus at a time when you're least efficient and you're now drawing it out 4 or 5 times longer, and that's not a good use of anybody's time.
Agreed. And then it brings to the second point, and you kind of already touched on this about eating your schedule. Your eating schedule should be around your chronotype, because she really focused and talked a little bit about mistimed meals, and if you don't time it right, you can actually gain more weight, and you're going to actually you may not be able to build the lean muscle mass that you're hoping to, because your body is just not, that's just not the time for you to eat based on, when you're productive, when you wake up, and your whole sleep cycle. Now, again, we know that you don't want to eat before bedtime because of the spike in, blood glucose levels and stuff that is not going to help you when you're thinking about restorative sleep in general. However, it totally makes sense. And like you said, no matter what type of diet or nutritional routine you have, I think it's important to know that, because, kind of schedule backwards. When are you going to wake up? When are you going to go to bed? And when is your eating times? And how do you feel accordingly? Because if you see that big drop, something's not right.
Yeah. And I was just talking to a client about his eating patterns to begin with. Well, more specifically about alcohol consumption, because it'd be one of those, him and his wife would have a little nightcap, before going to bed, after the kids are down, to go to sleep, then they have a little, a glass of wine or something, and they catch up with each other, but then they're soon to go to bed because their kids wake up early. Right. So just talking about, hey, is there a way you can get that glass of wine earlier, or have dinner a little bit earlier so that it doesn't impact your sleep as much? Because one of the things he talks about is waking up in the middle of the night. Right. And so once we started to manipulate, even by a half hour, 45 minutes, his food and alcohol consumption, or whatever he's consuming later at night, that has meant a huge difference in his quality of sleep. Right. So that's I've seen examples of that really being beneficial towards, how somebody wakes up in the morning. So that's a really big point.
I agree. And so then, so we talked about, obviously planning your training sessions. You also want to think about planning your nutrition. And then I think it's important also to remember number 3, that she talks about planning your sleep cycle or your sleep time, and schedule that accordingly. Because if you know the bedtime routine and you actually have a set routine, your body starts to adjust to that routine. And then when you kind of, take yourself out of that routine, it's not good for anyone. And it's the same thing with our kids. We put our kids, like, your bedtime is strictly at this time, and we hold them accountable. However, we start to not hold ourselves accountable. And I think at the end of the day, that is, attributing to a lot of our health issues, because, you want to be able to get, 7 to 8 hours of restorative sleep. You want to be able to make sure that's what's happening. However, try to think, if I'm going to go to bed, which it says here, make sure you're in bed by 11 o'clock, then I need to think 90 minutes ahead and start my bedtime regimen and routine. So at 11 o'clock, I'm asleep. And I think that was a very key point that she was indicating, that, think about your performance, think about your nutrition, and now set your routine, because that is going to play a huge role in how you feel the next day.
Yeah, gigantic. I mean, yeah, it's all about routine. Just like you brush your teeth, take a shower, and all that good stuff. You got to have something that gets your brain kind of thinking, oh, okay, it's that time again, right? So again, you're listening to us here on Random Fit. Wendy Batts and I talking about sleep science, and we're talking more specifically about chronotypes. So I think the next one, because you have kids and I have kids, Wendy, is the weekend. My kids have gotten, unfortunately accustomed to, and it's just natural, right? Friday comes along, my kids are thinking, oh, I get to stay up late and I get to sleep in the morning. Well, guess what there is to pay on Monday morning when it's time to wake them up for school, right? They've been sleeping later, waking up 2 hours after the time we're supposed to be in the car, right? Because my son, he can just sleep in until 9, 10 o'clock if it's depending on how he's feeling. But guess what? We have to be in the car at 7:30 to get him to school, right? So that doesn't bode well when you've got about a 2-hour swing. So the weekends, we've gotten better as far as getting them within an hour of what their usual bedtime is, but just to account for maybe visiting the family, doing other things social wise, watching a movie in the evening, something like that, just to kind of relax and unload a little bit. But the weekends, ideally should not vary that much from what you do on the weekday. Again, it is a part of establishing that routine that gets your brain and body synchronized to what's going to be best for you when it comes to, okay, are you a morning person or are you the late morning person when it comes to when you're going to function best. And we kind of already talked about that. Well, I already talked about it a little bit regarding blue light, but this is one of those hidden things that kind of makes and breaks, the quality of sleep.
Mm-hmm. And blue light is when you're thinking about that, what does blue light do? It stimulates being awake. And so when you're on your phone and you're looking at all those things and there's blue lights there, you're stimulating your brain to, even though it's your time to unwind, blue light is actually telling you something different. So you're kind of playing this tug of war with your brain. And so that's why you want to avoid it at night, because that will disrupt how you sleep. And if you're really tired in the morning, in this article, Dr. Brigard says, listen, get on the blue light because it will stimulate you being more awake. So maybe in the morning, that's the time right when you wake up. If you want to try to wake up and you're feeling pretty groggy and, you've got a case of the Mondays, as she says, or, you feel like, you're just not there. It can actually be used for a benefit. It's just, you need to use it at the right time. And before bed is not it. And so, I found, again, the top 5 that she gave us, just to recap, was plan your peak training sessions based on when you are performing at your highest level. And it doesn't even have to be training. It can be when you need to perform at your highest, whether it's at your job or you're planning a meeting or a presentation, things that where you really need to be awake and on, that's your on time. Plan your eating schedule around the time that fits best with your chronotype. Number 3, sleep schedule. Plan your sleep schedule accordingly. If you know what time you should go to bed, plan 90 minutes before to get yourself into that regimen and routine. So therefore, you're in bed and ready to go to sleep at that time. 4 was, as you said, don't disrupt your weekends. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And we've said that multiple times. So try to think about staying on a routine. Especially if you have children, it's only going to help you on Monday morning. And then last is, when necessary, use blue light, but know when that time is for you.
Yeah. And I think, the thing about blue light, one more thing, is that even though you've got all the lights turned off and all you got is your phone, just you, this phone screen, just shining on your face, you don't realize that it's still sending a signal to your brain like, oh, it's daylight out. Right? Don't be confused. The fact that the room is dark and you've got this little device that's flashing that blue light at you, it's still, the brain doesn't know the difference, right? So that's been one of the really big behaviors that I look at when it comes to helping clients, manage and protect sleep, is just that blue light. Like you said, it makes or breaks you. It's just, are you using it as a tool, or is it kind of working against you as a weapon? So I don't know. I don't know how else to say.
I don't know if I would have put it quite like that, but
it's a friend or a foe. Yeah, it just depends on how you're looking at things.
Yeah. And where we found it, again, if you guys go to NASM.org and look under the blog, you're going to see what we're talking about. Do you have the actual blog name, Ken?
No.
Okay, because it was like how to find your chronotype. I think that
they'll be able to find it under that.
Yeah, and like I said, again, Dr. Allison Brager, we want to say thank you first of all for being able to write such an amazing blog, and that's how we actually came up with this podcast. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as Ken and I. I learned a ton, but like I said, inside that blog, I really suggest everyone go to the blogs and read all of them, because they're all has some great content in there. But look at that one particular website that she has, find out what your number is, and then be able to use that. Like I said, the top 5 that we just told you that she had talked about in there, use those to your advantage. Help yourself throughout the day by just knowing when should you go to bed, when should you wake up. And that's basically because of your biological clock, not because someone told you to.
Right. That's as good a summary as we're going to get. So, so for those of you listening to us here on Random Fit, both Wendy Batts and I, we always have fun doing I have fun, at least, Wendy.
I have fun.
I have a good time. So if you want to hear more from us on topics related to random fitness, like, follow, subscribe, and comment, and let us know what you'd like to hear. And we'll be sure to get that on the next episode or one of the upcoming episodes of Random Fit. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.